Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the TAC meeting this morning, September 23rd. So we do have a quorum, so we'll get on down to it. So the first item is the approval of the TAC agenda for today, September 23rd, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. All right, the next thing is the approval of the TAC meeting minutes from August 26th, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from August 26th, 2024. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, thanks. Next is Director's Report, Chad.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. Good morning, members of the Technical Advisory Committee. We really appreciate your presence because quorum, this morning we are looking how critical quorum is. We have a couple of items that are important for approval, for example, TIP amendment that has certain timelines for TPB and so on. Thank you so much for your participation every month, not just today. So we have a few items to report to you, beginning with there was a public meeting on K-15 corridor last week on Wednesday at 4 p.m. There was some Transsystems was leading the study while Sedgwick County, City of Wichita, Derby, and WAMPO and KDOT staff were partnering on the project and supporting that as well. So that, and JB Wilson will be here soon. He'll be presenting K254 corridor study as well. And then we have three more items staff will help report to you, beginning with 2025 Unified Planning Work Program. Let me request Marky to present. Marky.
Thank you. Good morning, Marky Jonas, Administrative and Public Outreach Coordinator. So like Chad said, I'm presenting about the 2025 Unified Planning Work Program, which is currently in the public comment period. The Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, is WAMPO's primary budgeting document for planning activities during the year. Funding for the UPWP comes from various sources, including Federal Comprehensive Planning Grant, or CPG funds, which require a 20% local match. And the CPG local match expenditures in the 2025 UPWP total $2,785,495. So the public comment period is started on September 9 and will run through October 8th. It is available on the WAMPO website, as well as print copies at the WAMPO offices and the Wichita Advanced Learning Library. And comments can be sent to wampo@wampo.org. And then I wanted to just kind of run through some of the priority projects in 2025, just so that everyone is aware, since it is one of our core documents. So I know there's a lot on the slide. I apologize. I will try and go through it quickly. So I'll just go through it. So in 2025, our planning priorities include the development of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP 2050, by June of 2025. So that includes maintaining and integrating the travel demand model and the congestion management process, which is another core document. And then also the consultants that are helping with us with that. And then another big priority is our ongoing safety initiatives and activities. So that includes supporting ICT Safe, Regional Transportation Coalition, implementing and continuing to work on our comprehensive safety action plan, and then also identifying eligible projects and facilitating the use of the Safe Streets and Roads for All demonstration grant that we were awarded last December. And then also preparing to apply for an implementation grant. And then, of course, also our Safe Routes to School plan development. And then just ongoing administration and operations of the MPO. We will develop or begin developing the Regional Active Transportation Plan, and then also ongoing bicycle and pedestrian planning, including our annual counts, which you will hear more about soon. And then also multimodal and complete streets planning to increase safe and accessible options for all modes of transportation. Okay, And then ongoing public transit and paratransit planning in coordination with our planning partners, KDOT, Wichita Transit, and others in the region. And that will include assisting with the FTA 5310 program in 2025 and completing the regional transit implementation plan. And then public engagement with both the general public and stakeholders to make sure that everyone is involved in transportation planning and decision-making in the region. And then we will also be updating our Title VI program and limited English proficiency plan in 2025. And then we have ongoing administration of the Transportation Improvement Program. And then another big thing in 2025 is we will begin doing a household travel survey. So that's part of ongoing transportation data and modeling. And then also the Regional Intelligent Transportation Systems Architecture, which you will also hear more about shortly. And then also just participating in other regionally significant projects in the region. I know that was a lot. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. I think we have Mark Jonas and Dora Gayo and Kim Negret. They were working on various projects like bike ped count and regional transit implementation plan. Kim Negret is here as our multimodal transportation safety planner, updating on a couple of items. Kim, thank you.
Good morning. Just wanted to say thank you. We have completed the 2024 annual bike ped count. Shout out to Russ and several of you for standing out on corners and counting pedestrians and bicyclists and
It was fun.
It is. It's a good time. You get to meet the community going by. So wanted to say thank you. We had approximately 35 count locations across the region, over 60 volunteers helping this year with the count. So we'll be putting all that data together and getting a report out to you shortly. So thank you to everyone for helping us recruit and stand out there and count as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. The next item on regional transit implementation plan. We had a meeting on September 16th on regional transit implementation plan. What's happening is the consulting firm is helping involve the major employers in the region and how the major employers can contribute to partnering with in transit planning, whether it is sharing the point A to point B origin destination of the employees' data, or finding out what are the ways to collaborate on the transit options, developing transit options. So those presentations will happen soon for this body, for this committee as well. Kim, anything else, Kim? Okay. All right. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right, thank you. It's great updates. All right, next we have public comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this forum? Anybody online? Okay, we will move on to our action items. We have two action items today. The first one is the fiscal year 2025 to 28 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment number 2. Peter.
Good morning, TAC members. So before you, I have TAC Amendment number 2. So it went through its regular public comment period from August 30th to September 13th. We are here today on item number 2, TAC recommendation on the 23rd, and then this will be considered by TPP, assuming all goes well, on October 8th. You can check out the full details in the amendment summary that is shown on the screen or as an attachment linked in your packet and in a link at the bottom of the webpage at the URL shown. There are 9 projects in Amendment 2 that have requested changes that require TAC TPP approval. 5 requests for new projects to be added to the TIP, 1 request for 2 projects to be combined, as shown as the removal of 2 projects and the addition of 1, and 1 for a project to be modified in the TIP. In addition, we also provide notice of 4 other projects with administrative adjustments that don't require any formal action by TAC or TPP. This map is also in your packet. You can view the different projects for Amendment number 2 and the administrative ones affected by the administrative adjustment. And here's our list of projects requiring formal action as a companion to the map. I'll go through the table here on the WAMPO suballocated projects. So those first 3 lines, that is the combining of the Meridian Saddlebrook multi-use trail. And the tip, what that looks like is we remove two projects, the two ones that were going to be combined, and then combine them into one, essentially with the same exact cost as before. The 85th Street Broadway project had a increase in local funds that was reflected in this most recent amendment. And then we moved back a preliminary engineering phase from 26 back to 27. And the MPO SPBG funding was adjusted between construction and construction engineering. We had Sedgwick County, the new project, the MacArthur from 215th Street to West K42, the KDOT EV charger installation at Jabara Airport, also a new project. US 54 sign structure at Ridge Road, Sedgwick County, also a new KDOT project. Another KDOT project, Sedgwick County, half-mile west of K254 and Rock Road intersection to K254 and Greenwich Road intersection, also a new project. Much larger one here, the KDOT US 54 from 0.25 miles east of 159th Street East to Prairie Creek Road. New KDOT project there as well. And then our table here for the WAMPO suballocated funding changes to WAMPO suballocated projects. I have 6 entries that essentially don't describe any real changes. You can see again, we have the City of Hazel project that is combined, and you can see that -673 and -589 add up to that 5,262,961 total for the new combined project. We have the City of Park City project, which had the funding mix between preliminary engineering and construction engineering, and then the phase changed and the local project increase, but no changes to WAMPO suballocated funding. And then 2 administrative adjustments to WAMPO suballocated projects. The West Street I-235 MacArthur project had the mix of funding between construction and construction engineering changed, and the Maple Street pathway had an increase in local project funding, but no changes to WAMPO suballocated funding. But whenever we have any changes to WAMPO suballocated projects, we always include them on this table. And then finally, we have a list of the different local, state, and federal funding changes broken out into different columns here. This is also available in the packet for your review. Moving on here, the amendment number 2 meets requirements, public comment and review period. It's consistent with the current MTP, Reimagine Move 2040, is fiscally constrained and adds a financial impact of $27.1 million. Any questions for me before we move on to our action item? In that case, tip amendment number 2, your action items are before you. We can recommend the TPP approve the FFY 2025 to 2028 tip amendment as presented, recommend they not approve it, or recommend the TPP approve it with specific changes. Staff recommendation, recommend the TPP approve tip amendment number 2 as presented.
Anybody like to make a motion to approve the tip?
I'll make it a motion to approve tip number 2 as presented.
A motion and a second to approve tip number 2 as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. Move on to the next action item. That's the support KDOT federal performance measure targets.
So some background on performance-based planning. FHWA or the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration jointly issued a planning rule to document changes in the statewide and metropolitan planning processes consistent with the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century or MAP 21 Act and the Fixing American Surface Transportation or FAST Act. This rule specifies the requirements for state DOTs and metropolitan planning organizations to implement a performance-based approach to planning and programming. So performance management, it's a strategic approach to connect investment and policy decisions to help achieve performance goals. So performance measures are quantitative criteria used to evaluate progress, and the performance measure targets are the benchmarks against which progress is assessed from available data. So federal performance measures, there's 3 FHWA or Federal Highway Administration performance measures and one FTA transit asset management rule, and one FTA transit safety rule. We'll be looking at 4 of these today. So with these, as far as what the MPO must do, after the state DOT establishes their performance measure targets, MPOs must either support the state targets or establish their own performance measure targets. In 2023, with TPP approval, WAMPO chose to support the state in achieving their performance measure targets for PM1, the federal highway safety measures, PM2, the bridge and pavement conditions, PM3, system performance, and TAM, or transit asset management. For 2024, the performance measure targets supported last year, they remain unchanged with the exception of new PM1 safety targets for 2024. And I'll go through all these targets here with you. So PM1, we had the federal performance measure targets. They have elected to continue with that goal of 400 fatalities for 2024. They are making progress towards that. We were 426 in 2022. We got down to 415 last year. So they're making progress there. And these are the pavement and bridge condition targets. These targets were set and reported on a biennial basis, and KDOT set PM targets for 2024 and 2026, and they remain unchanged from when we supported them in 2023. With these targets, if you do go to the KDOT performance measures, it says 2025 or 2023 and 2025 targets. Sorry for the bit of confusion in there. When we received these and an official correspondence with the state, it's how the year they will be evaluated. So in 2024, they'll look at 2023 data. 2026, they look at 2025 data. But that's how the correspondence was, and that's how we adopted them last year as 24 and 26 targets. And we have our system performance, which looks at the person miles or the reliable person miles on all of the different state roadways across the state. And those targets, again, remain unchanged. And then we have the transit asset management, which looks at different transit assets across the state. These targets remain unchanged since we supported them in 2023 and were initially established in KDOT's 2022 Transit Asset Management Plan. And you can see those here before you there. Going through here. Those are those state targets. They remain unchanged other than the adoption of new 2024 performance measure targets. Staff recommendation is to approve KDOT's federal performance targets in 2024 as presented. Before I list the action items, any questions for me?
It's a quick comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Just want to share with you that how MPOs and KDOT collaborate in developing these targets, and also how, for example, safety PM1, performance measure 1 is an example I wanted to share with you that Vanessa Spartan will be presented today is that KDOT having initiatives and programs and strategies on how to reduce fatalities and serious injuries throughout the state. And the WAMPO staff also hired Kim Negret as a full-time, as an example how WAMPO is taking measures to, dedicate staff and programs and initiatives in the future. These are examples of how state and MPOs collaborate in these goals. This is one of the reasons why MPOs choose to support and adopt states' goals as well. And MPOs work with local jurisdictions and all communities here as well. And Kim would be doing the same in the future, how we all work towards these goals and targets to improve those because of these performance measures that Peter has shared. So just want to touch base the context behind this. Thank you, Peter.
That brings us to our action item. So we can recommend the TPP approve supporting KDOT's federal performance measure targets in 2024 as presented, recommend the TP not approve, or recommend the TPP approve supporting KDOT's federal performance measure targets with specific changes.
Are there any questions for Peter? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the support for KDOT federal performance measure targets?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the sport KDOT federal performance measure targets as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Thank you, Peter. Next, we have discussion and updates. We have the KDOT safety presentation. Vanessa from KDOT. Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Vanessa Spartan. I'm the Chief of Transportation Safety at KDOT, and it is fun to follow you all in your decision on federal performance measures. You're going to see some, those federal performance measures are 5-year rolling averages. That's what you have to do on the federal side. You're going to see some actuals today that will probably confuse the numbers a little bit, but they shouldn't too much, hopefully. So what I'm here today to go over is the update process of our 5-year strategic safety plan for the state. We have to do that every 5 years in alignment with those federal performance measures, as well as the Highway Safety Improvement Program legislation, or laws, I should say. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'll quickly go over the why as a good reminder to us, and then I'm going to go over the plan update, including its features and goals, how we're engaging stakeholders, efforts to localize the Drive to Zero, what our schedule looks like, and then other ways that you or your staff can get involved. You go to the next slide, please. So in the last 5 years, we've lost over 2,000 people to crashes on Kansas Road. In addition, more than 8,300 people have been seriously injured. Typically, those serious injury definitions have the potential to be disabling in nature. So you're talking about life-altering injuries. I left 2 slides off to be brief. Usually I kind of include some articles and headlines just showing the community and families impacted by these events. And then the next slide I typically show is the comprehensive crash cost. The good news is that we're trending very well as a state. Of note, since 2020, we have been trending down for 3.5 years in terms of fatalities. And right now we monitor every week where we stand with fatalities. So as of last Tuesday, we are sitting 13% below where we were in 2023 this same time. So assuming that we don't have a large uptick in the last few months of the year, we will end 2024 with another downward year. That said, a couple different things. We are trending upward in serious injuries as a state. Those are those disabling in nature events. So that's an area of focus for us. But in total, when you look at all of the crash events, everything from fatality to property damage only, we are down 8% as a state. So we're doing well. If you go to the next slide, please. So the Drive to Zero plan is what we call our strategic highway safety plan. That the strategic highway safety plan is the federal terminology for what we're doing. Our current plan sunsets in 2024, so we're underway on updating it, and that plan horizon will be until 2029. So what we really do is we focus on, in this plan, what sort of strategic investments we can make within a 5-year period to eliminate as many serious injury and death crash events in the state. And one of the things that we're doing is we're moving towards that safe system approach. So we've changed our mission language a little bit to say that really the role is to reinforce the layers of the safe system in Kansas. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. If you go to the next slide. So first off, the core features of the plan, it's data-driven and it requires communication and collaboration. I said this to the policy board, but data doesn't make decisions. People do based upon the values that we hold. So those communications and collaborations are critically important. So we hold each other to high standards. It's a living document with strategic actions, and it influences how we invest. It's developed and implemented in collaboration across 3 different types of stakeholders. So our executive body is called the Drive to Zero Coalition, or the DTZ Coalition, and then they are supported by strategy teams and support teams. And I'll go over those here in a little bit too. Go to the next slide. Okay, so I talked about utilizing the safe system approach and focusing on system redundancies. So if you look at the top right, that is the safe system wheel that has all the principles in it and the 5 core objectives of what a safe system is. The bottom, that Swiss cheese diagram, is meant to help to illustrate this importance of system redundancy. So in theory, the way that this works is that fatal crash events only happen when all of the layers of that Swiss cheese fail. So you have people making bad road choices, you have vehicles that don't have safety features keeping them in their road or slowing down their speeds. We don't have speed management. The roadway designs are not properly accounting for human vulnerabilities and crash events, and then post-crash care, either timeliness or quality was not available. So that's the idea, is that we're moving towards this approach of more specifically focusing how can we as different types of system managers influence the system redundancies. We're also going to incorporate findings and strategies from secondary assessments that we've done over the last couple years. We want to increase awareness and shared ownership in the plan, its outcomes and its outputs. And then a really important part is localizing the drive to zero. So that's really important for you all, that your roles that you serve with the MPO. If you go to the next slide. So I talked about quickly the executive body, the Drive to Zero Coalition. This slide shows you about half of them, but really they leverage the skills and resources of many different agencies and organizations to influence traffic safety on all roads in Kansas. If you go to the next slide. This is the representation of the membership of the Drive to Zero Coalition. So we have everything from federal and state agencies to nonprofit and advocacy organizations, organizations that represent local governments, and we also have the House and Senate Transportation Committee chairs that sit on this coalition. If you go to the next slide. The coalition is supported by strategy teams and support teams. The strategy teams line up with those safe system objectives. So there's a team that specifically focuses on road user behaviors, the Safer People team. We have safer roads, safer vehicles, safer speeds, and post-crash care. And then those ones are open to anybody who wants to be involved in collaborating across those strategies and strategic initiatives and how we advance them in the state. The support teams, they support in the areas of data, policy, or legislation and communication. And they basically are at the will of the Drive to Zero Coalition. So the idea is that if the coalition approves the work of the strategy teams, they might tap those support teams to help with implementation efforts. If you go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about localizing the Drive to Zero. So what we intend to do is when this plan gets completed later in 2025, we want to interact with the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, the regional planning commissions, local, regional, county agencies that have safety plans or have ongoing planning efforts, and then also reaching out to some of those overrepresented cities or counties that maybe aren't doing safety planning yet. The idea is that we can have some forums for targeted discussion. And then we can also leverage other organizations that represent government officials or organization that represents the planners or engineers that are helping to develop these safety plans across the state. When we do this process of localizing the Drive to Zero, we want to talk about what our focus is at a statewide level, but we also want to hear what the concerns are locally. And then we want to try and match up to what resources we have available to support, or other kind of areas of partnership maybe that folks are maybe not aware of. If you go to the next slide. So in terms of when does everything happen, this is our current schedule. We are several months in. So we are currently in the process of refining our strategies and developing performance indicators and analyzing those strategies in terms of effectiveness. As we roll into those winter months, we're going to be focusing really heavily on writing that plan, refining it from feedback from the executive body. And then we're going to be seeking plan approval in June and July 2025. So that approval is first, approval at the state scale, and then we also have to go through FHWA for sign off and approval. Then from 2025 to 2029, we focus on implementing and that localizing effort. So that's where we kind of start getting into the local agency engagement efforts that we are planning out. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so a couple different ways that you or others can get involved. If you go to the next one. So of course you can localize safety with your own stakeholders and in your own organizations or in your communities, right? So focusing on safety conscious decisions. I have a couple different sites to go over these events, but we have a Drive to Zero Day at the Capitol coming up. We have our annual Transportation Safety Conference. And then we have a couple different ways that you can get involved as a stakeholder. So you can join the Friends of the Coalition, which allows you to observe those executive meetings either in person or online, or you can get involved in one of the strategy teams. Our email address is there if you're interested in any of those things. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so The Drive to Zero Day is held at the Capitol Building in Topeka. This year will be February 12th. It's both a media event and an opportunity for, we have some open house displays as well as some networking opportunities. The second there is the 30th Annual Transportation Safety Conference. We will be in Wichita this year at the Hyatt Regency in downtown. March 4th and 5th, they're the main conference days. There is for law enforcement folks, there is a specific day for them on March 3rd as well. I gave some statistics there based upon last year's event. So we had over 400 registrants. We had 19 concurrent sessions. We had 3 keynote or plenary speakers. We typically bring them in from out of state. And then we also had regional discussions to talk about opportunities for coalition building, kind of localizing issues with safety. If you go to the next slide. Our next Drive to Zero Coalition meeting, our executive body, is coming up on November 13th. It's from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. There's our website there, but basically you can either register to attend in person or through just watch and observe through our Zoom link as well. If you go to the next slide. And then our strategy team. So they had their first rounds of meeting in July, and the next rounds of meetings are in October. So you can see they're starting on October 21st, ending by October 31st, the various team meetings. And again, you can email us if you're interested in participating in any of those. We go to the next slide. Okay, so I'll end it here and I'm open for any questions. Just a reminder that while we're trying to guide these efforts, right, on a statewide scale, ultimately traffic safety is felt and it's most effective on a local scale. And so that's one of the things that we really recognize as a state is how best can we support various local governments as they're trying to focus on safety within their own communities. So thank you for having me here today, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for Vanessa? Well, thank you. So I think safety is very important. As a parent of someone that lost a child on the I-70, it's definitely important that we do everything we can for safety on our roads.
Sorry to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. All right, if there's no questions for Vanessa, we'll move on to the next item. It's the annual Title 6 report. Markey?
Thank you. Yes, I'm just going to give a very brief update. So WAMPO completed our Title VI report on September 3rd. So Title VI was enacted as part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs receiving federal financial assistance. So of course, WAMPO complies completely with Title VI as well as related statutes and regulations. So we annually develop a Title VI report that we submit to KDOT and also post on our website at wampo.org/title-Roman numeral 6. And the annual report demonstrates just our ongoing efforts to create and maintain transparent and inclusive planning processes by integrating Title VI as well as environmental justice and limited English proficiency. And that's about it. All of those resources are available on our website. The annual report is not, but all of the other documents are also available in Spanish and Vietnamese. And then to date, no Title VI complaints have ever been received by WAMPO. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Markey. All right, next we'll move on to item C. It's an intelligent transportation architecture update. We have Matt Baker from GEO and also Slade from Trans Systems.
Good morning, Matthew Baker from GEO Consulting, Slade Engstrom from Trans Systems. We're going to walk through the intelligent transportation project that we've started this month. First of all, intelligent transportation system architecture, a quick definition is the dynamic mapping of the stakeholders in the region that have roles and responsibilities towards the management of the system as technology is applied to increase the safety and improve transportation in the region. ITS architecture can exist at the national, at the state, at the regional area, and it can even exist at the project level. And each of those levels, the detail increases and what you want to address. So with this project, the key thing we want to do is engage those stakeholders. The stakeholders are mapped in the architecture. Those are all those individuals, anywhere from planners to engineers, to the folks that do projects, down to those first responders and emergency management team. We want to engage those folks to gather their input. The last time this architecture was updated was 2006. And while ITS architecture is fairly robust, there are a lot of things that have changed in the technology world in that time frame. And that includes connected vehicles and integrated corridors. So Slade will cover a little bit about what TSMO is right now and what it's been in the past, and how we're wanting to discover what TSMO is for WAMPO going forward. We will engage a steering committee 4 times, which is a select group of those stakeholders, to get their input and help us guide through this project. We're going to update the architecture itself, make sure that our existing ITS inventory is up to date, and then work on that strategic deployment plan that Slade will start talking about here in a second. And we also want to make sure that we look at all of that data in the architecture, make sure that those roles and responsibilities are covered with who owns the data, how it's shared, and how folks benefit from something like a centralized data repository. We're going to be fairly aggressive on this project. We'd like, and we've already gotten a few steps done this month. The rest of the steering committee meetings starting today and through the holidays will happen in October. And then we hope to have a very large stakeholder event at the beginning of November to be able to gather all that data. And then the consulting team will take that data, create some deliverables, publish some things, and put things in front of you for review and comment. So getting into that TSMO subject, transportation systems management operations is really everyone's topic to get management and operations in the transportation system addressed. And mostly it has to do with the application of technology and how we keep our roads safe. So I will turn it over to Slade to talk about the past and the present of TSMO.
So I don't know, I know Paul was on the committee when we wrote this plan. I think it was published back in 2018. I think we started in 2016. But at the end of the day, I don't know if all of you knew, there was an actual TSMO plan for this region that was put forth back in 2018. And again, we want to hit on, these aren't new ideas. A lot of this stuff has been done for years. TSMO was a way of kind of reorganizing it and putting it all in kind of one package. And there's many different pieces to it. FHWA, if you go out to their website, has a great definition of it that is, I think, about 3 sentences long. But I think for me, one of the things that I try to focus on is more the maintenance and the operations side of that TSMO lingo. And the best way I can put it into perspective is to go through kind of an example of a project that was recently completed, so you guys get a feel for kind of what TSMO involves. And the history on this one is going back to about 2018, actually. Don Snyder was the Metro engineer, and he approached Tom and I at the time and said, hey, is there any way we can work on this curve at the where eastbound K96 meets eastbound US 54? We've had a bunch of crews out there doing traffic control all day. They've had the ramp shut down. And what was happening was there would be a semi would go around the curve too fast. K96, is kind of up and over, so you don't really see the other side of the bridge. And there's a spiral curve that starts in that bridge too, so you don't really see how sharp that curve is until you get over the bridge. And so what happens is you can kind of see in the example, a semi kind of would roll over as it would take that curve too fast. And once a heavy load gets a little bit sideways, it's going to go over. But the problem was the recovery of that. So you can see there's a tow truck sitting in the middle of the lane. He had to pull it back towards the roadway to try to get it righted. By the time you try to salvage that load, do a bunch of other things out there, it was taking all day from when one of these crashes would happen. It'd take about 8 hours to get everything righted and the road back open, not because there was anything in the roadway, simply just because they were trying to right the semi and save the load. So we did end up implementing a project in 2020 that was, you can kind of see if you watch the right side, you can see there's a lot, let's see if I can do a laser pointer here. You can watch the truck come through, and this is just on loop, but if you look at this sign, it'll light up. There'll be a semi that comes through here. And you can see that sign light up when he comes through there. And it simply says reduce speed. So it was a dynamic message sign that we had. It's not on all the time. There was a sensor we added to the roadway that would detect the speed. And if it was an over height, over width, so you could get height, width, and speed from the sensor. That's what this is showing, is just when those go by. You see the truck just went, lit up. You can kind of see his brake lights. I know it's pretty small, but the good news is that it has been working pretty well. So how many activations we have hundreds of activations a day when this goes off. So there's a lot of people approaching that curve too fast. We actually implemented the solution pretty quickly. We were able to attach it to an existing project. And then with that, basically they were able to get it out there. It's an edge solution, so everything happens out in the field. There's no communication back and forth to the TMC, which was a little bit problematic. So we actually changed that, added a feature in the last year to give us a report of when this is happening. So that's why we were able to kind of put this chart together to kind of start looking at performance measure on what's actually happening out there. So prior to 2018, there was roughly 3 crashes per year that were doing this major recovery effort. In 2018, which is the year Dawn called us, it was up to 6, and there were 3 in 1 month. So it was kind of on the uptick. Since we have implemented, there have been 0. So since 2020 till now, 4 years, 0 overturns by semis. So I bring all this together because in that plan, and I think there's copies around for you all if you want to peruse it. But this chart's kind of a good one that the FHWA put out. And, it shows like traditional kind of road improvements. If you think about some of the freeway improvements and stuff like US 54, those are going to happen still. It's not like you can get rid of those, but there are a number of other things that you can do in conjunction with it that will help provide additional benefit cost ratios to kind of help combat different things. So it's a nice little chart, kind of goes through that. A few years ago, Sherry had us do, using before and after data, a lot of the benefit cost ratio for the actual TMC and all of the TSMO activities we're doing. So including service area patrol and stuff for the metro area here. And we were in that 10-to-1 range. We did a sensitivity analysis on that as well. Low end, we were 8-to-1. High end, we were in that 40-to-1 range. So you can tell there's depending on what you do with some of these things, you can get a whole lot of different outcomes from those. And what I really wanted to do with that example, though, is kind of walk you through how that was a good example of TSMO. It started with a real problem that we got from feedback from operations folks in the field. We addressed it through a technology solution, did a pilot project to work out kind of the details on all of how everything worked. And through that process, actually, there's now 2 more systems have been implemented in the last month in Kansas City. So far, so good on those as well. They were having quite a few each month type of issues. And since they've been in and calibrated, they haven't had any incidents again up there as well. So again, we're able to look at that from those perspectives, expand that program out. And then you have a performance measures. I showed you chart of activations as well as the crashes that haven't been happening because of that. So with all of that, we'll put together a nice sheet that goes with this one of kind of a success story. We've done similar things in the past with smart work zones, the city's been working on a lot of coordination efforts and things like that that provide a lot of benefit costs as well. So overall, I know this is small. At the back part of that plan that's on your table, this is the last sheet. This is kind of the work plan. This is also something that we kind of wrote it in a way to where we can update this pretty easily in the plan. And that's kind of the goal of this afternoon's meeting, the stakeholder meeting we're going to. So with many of those types of things, you know, it's been 6 years since we've done it. If you look, these are the ones that I've kind of crossed off the list to start with. There's a few others that are in progress, or for things like traffic incident management, for instance, we'll probably never take that off the ongoing things that we're going to keep doing. But in general, that was kind of my spiel, and hope to see a few of you this afternoon too, and we'll keep moving on this. Any questions you all have for Matt or I?
All right, I appreciate you coming down and presenting. All right, next we have item D, the K 254 Access Management Plan. JB Wilson from KDOT.
Hi there. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to be presenting on the K254 Access Management Plan. This presentation was put together by David Seitz. He's an engineer. He's a lot more articulate than I am, so bear with me as I make it through this presentation. A corridor management is a complex plan that addresses a corridor several miles long, usually through multiple local and county jurisdictions. It includes comprehensive engineering analysis and consideration of land use and development impacts to plan for transportation improvements that will meet future needs. I'm here today to report that the project team is hard at work completing the plan and preparing our final public meeting. They have completed the initial investigation, worked with key stakeholders, and come up with some really great concepts for K254. Our next milestone is the final showing of the corridor plan on October 9th at Circle Middle School in Benton. David Seitz will report to the K254 Corridor Development Association at their regular November meeting with the goal of reporting that the corridor management plan is complete. As of today, the plan is nearly complete. Please see the agenda for the evening or for today's presentation. I will provide the project overview and a summary of the process to date. Then I will cover the significant findings of the study and briefly show the concepts from the open houses in late July and early August. Finally, I will wrap up the presentation with a discussion of the next steps. All right. The purpose of the study is to anticipate future land development and establish an access management plan approach that serves the community while keeping traffic moving efficiently and safely. A 2050 planning horizon is the planning horizon to determine what is needed for long-term improvements by 2050. The planned area is 22 miles long from Wichita to El Dorado. KDOT, the 254 Corridor Development Association, Butler County, Sedgwick County, Park City, Keachai, Wichita, Bel Air, Benton, Towanda, and El Dorado have partnered in delivering this planning project. The plan kicked off in April of 2023. 4 public engagement meetings have already been held. The general phases of the project are issues and opportunities, potential improvements, preferred alternatives and recommendations, and finally, final recommendations. We are wrapping up the final recommendations phase now. The plan recommends transportation solutions that are going to serve everyone into the future with continued development and growth in traffic volumes. The plan provides short-term and long-term strategies to help with the uncertainty and the timing of traffic growth. Traffic will be effectively managed in the short term as an expressway with at-grade intersections that are used today. The long-term plan is for K254 to become a freeway. The freeway concepts removes the at-grade intersections, new interchanges, will be the only access points onto K-254. To maintain local access and local opportunities, overpasses will be used at select locations. A continuous paved frontage road will be needed on the south side of K-254. And select local roads may need to be considered for additional improvements. The QR code on the right-hand side of the screen will take you to the KDOT website for the K-254 project, and the address has been provided at the bottom. All recent public meeting documents are available online. This is an image of the short-term improvements on the western half of the corridor. We generally recommend the following improvements: lighting at intersections, extensions of existing turn lanes and existing acceleration lanes, new turn lanes and acceleration lanes, R-cuts as the middle step between short-term and long-term improvements at the Adams and Main Street intersections. This image represents the short-term improvements on the eastern half of the corridor. The plan notes 2 additional recommendations in this section to begin restricting access to meet the long-term goal of the freeway intersection. This will happen at Arapahoe Road, is recommended to be converted to right in, right out with turn lane improvements. And Shumway Road is recommended to restrict the north lane to right in, right out, and the south leg to fully closed. This image is of the long-term proposal of the western half of the corridor. The gray box at Rock and Webb Road states that the area has been selected into KDOT's design phase pipeline, and that the design is recommended to be a separate project. The plan recommends interchanges at Greenwich, Butler Road, and Main Street. The typical recommended configuration for an interchange is a diamond. An exception at Butler Road was made to preserve several houses in the northeast corridor. An overpass is recommended at 127th Street and County Line Road. This is an image of the long-term proposal for the eastern half of the corridor. The plan recommends interchanges at Adams Road, River Valley Road, and Ohio Street. The interchanges are planned to be diamonds except for River Valley. River Valley will be a folded diamond to avoid impacts to the local floodplain. The south ramp terminal at River Valley will be a roundabout intersection. An overpass will be provided at Tawakoni Road and Hunter Road. Our next step is the final showing that is planned to take place on October 9th. This slide outlines the general program. Oh, shoot. There we go. We have also scheduled some additional pop-up meetings along the corridor at El Dorado High School, Circle High School, and Butler County Community College. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JB. Any questions? All right, I appreciate the presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. All right, do appreciate all the presentations and updates that were given today. Next, we have other business. We have no other business, and next item is adjournment. Would you like to make a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn today's meeting. All in favor, say aye. All right, see you next month.